He walked out of a steam-filled bathroom in just a towel, and in that single moment, an entire generation of television viewers stopped breathing. That scene, simple, unexpected, unforgettable, turned a relatively unknown actor into one of the most talked-about names in primetime television history. His nickname became McSteamy, and it stuck forever. But the man behind that nickname was so much more than a moment, so much more than a character, and so much more than the charming, perfectly chiseled face that graced the screens of millions of American households every single Thursday night. His name was Eric Dane, and on February 19, 2026, the world lost him. This is not just a story about a celebrity death. This is a story about a man who faced the most terrifying diagnosis a human being can receive, and instead of retreating into the shadows, instead of hiding behind publicists and press releases, he stepped forward into the light. He spoke openly. He traveled to Washington. He raised his voice when his body was slowly losing the ability to move. He set a goal of raising $1 billion for ALS research. $1 billion. Not because he thought he could save himself, but because he wanted to save someone else. That is who Eric Dane really was. And if you stay with us through this entire story, you will understand why the world is not just mourning an actor today. It is mourning a genuine, irreplaceable human being. Eric William Dane was born on November 9, 1972, in San Francisco, California. He grew up in a city known for its culture, its creativity, and its independent spirit, and from a young age, Eric carried all of those qualities within him. He was drawn to performance early in his life, and after years of grinding through small television roles in the 1990s and early 2000s, the kind of roles that most actors take just to keep the lights on, he finally got his shot. And when that shot came, he took it with both hands and never let go. In 2006, Eric Dane joined the cast of Grey's Anatomy, the ABC medical drama that had already become one of the biggest shows on American television. He was brought in as Dr. Mark Sloan, a character who was supposed to shake things up, add some tension, some drama, some complicated history with the existing characters. What nobody predicted, not the writers, not the producers, not even Eric himself, was just how completely and totally audiences would fall in love with him. That bathroom scene, the towel, the steam, the casual confidence. It aired in the internet, or whatever version of social media existed back then, absolutely exploded. By the next morning, every entertainment website in America was writing about McSteamy, and Eric Dane was a star. But here is what separated Eric Dane from so many others who become famous for one defining moment. He refused to let that moment define his entire career. He stayed on Grey's Anatomy for years, developing Mark Sloan into a character of genuine emotional depth. He gave that character love, loss, heartbreak, and redemption. When Mark Sloan died on that show, fans across the country cried real tears. Not because of special effects or dramatic music, but because Eric Dane had made them care about a fictional surgeon as if he were a real person they personally knew and loved. That is not a small gift. That is an extraordinary one. After Grey's Anatomy, Eric took on The Last Ship, a military drama where he played Captain Tom Chandler, a commanding, stoic, deeply patriotic naval officer trying to save what remained of civilization after a catastrophic pandemic. It was a completely different kind of role, demanding a completely different kind of performance, and Eric delivered it with the same quiet intensity that had made him so magnetic on Grey's Anatomy. Critics noticed. Fans followed. And Eric Dane proved once again that he was not a one-trick actor hiding behind good looks. He was the real thing. And then came Euphoria. HBO's raw, unfiltered, deeply uncomfortable, and deeply brilliant exploration of addiction, identity, and the chaos of modern adolescence. In Euphoria, Eric Dane played Cal Jacobs, a character so far removed from McSteamy that viewers almost did not recognize him. Cal was not charming. Cal was not likable. Cal was a man destroyed by decades of suppressed truth, a man whose cruelty toward his own family stemmed from his inability to ever be honest about who he really was. It was a dark, challenging, morally complex role, and Eric Dane played it with such terrifying authenticity that critics called it the best work of his career. He was nominated, he was celebrated, and he proved, without any question, that at 50 years old, he was still growing as an actor, still pushing himself, still refusing to coast. Then came April 2025, and everything changed. Eric Dane went public with a diagnosis that silenced Hollywood. He had ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, one of the most brutal, most aggressive, most merciless neurological diseases known to medicine. ALS attacks the motor neurons, the nerve cells that control every voluntary movement in the human body. Walking, talking, swallowing, breathing. One by one, slowly and without pause, ALS takes them all. There is no cure. There is no remission. There is only progression, and the question is not whether it will take you. The question is only how fast. According to the Cleveland Clinic, the average life expectancy after an ALS diagnosis is 3 to 5 years. Eric Dane fought it for less than one. He first noticed something was wrong when he felt weakness in his right hand. Just a little weakness, the kind most people would brush off, chalk up to stress or overwork, ignore entirely and move on. But Eric did not ignore it. He went to doctors. He pushed for answers. And when those answers came back, they came back devastating. By the time he went public in April 2025, the disease had already progressed significantly. His right side had largely stopped functioning. His left side was beginning to follow. He told ABC's Diane Sawyer in a television interview that stunned the nation. "My left side is functioning. My right side has completely stopped working." He said it calmly. He said it with the same quiet steadiness that he brought to every difficult scene in every role he ever played. And the entire country sat in silence watching a man process the unprocessable in real time. By October 2025, Eric Dane was using a wheelchair full-time. But here's what you need to understand about this man, because this is the part of the story that matters most. He did not stop. He did not retreat. He did not hire a team to manage his public image and release carefully worded statements about privacy and family time. He did the opposite. In June 2025, the same month his Amazon Prime Video series Countdown premiered, a show he had filmed while already living with this diagnosis. He sat down with Good Morning America and spoke openly about his illness, his fear, his daughters, and his determination. He said he wanted to be there when his girls graduated college. He said he wanted to walk them down the aisle. He said he wanted grandchildren. And then he said, "I am going to fight to the last breath on this one." And he meant it. Every single word. In September 2025, Eric Dane announced a partnership with IAMALS, one of the leading patient advocacy organizations in the United States. He set a fundraising goal, not a modest, realistic, play-it-safe goal, but a goal of $1 billion for ALS research. $1 billion. When people questioned whether that was achievable, Eric's response was simple. He was not just raising money. He was raising awareness. He was making sure that every person in America knew what ALS was, what it did, and why it deserved far more attention and far more funding than it had ever received. He was making sure that his diagnosis, as terrible as it was, would mean something beyond his own suffering. In late September 2025, despite being in a wheelchair, despite losing function in both arms, Eric Dane traveled to Washington, D.C. He sat in front of lawmakers. He spoke about the ACT for ALS, federal legislation that provides critical research funding and expanded access to experimental treatments for ALS patients. He lobbied. He pushed. He used every ounce of whatever energy his body still had to fight for people he had never met, people who were sitting in their own wheelchairs in their own homes across America, watching a famous actor use his platform to fight for them. That is not performance. That is character. That is who a person really is when the cameras are not rolling and the scripts have been put away. Through all of this, Eric Dane was not alone. His wife, actress Rebecca Gayheart, was by his side. The couple had married in 2004, and while they had filed for divorce in 2018, they never truly separated in the ways that matter most. When Eric's diagnosis became known, Rebecca returned to his side completely and without hesitation. She cared for him. She advocated for him. She raised their two daughters, Billy and Georgia, with love and stability even as the family faced something no family should ever have to face. In a deeply personal essay published in December 2025, Rebecca wrote about their bond. Not a romantic love in the traditional sense anymore, but something deeper, something forged in crisis and loyalty, and the shared responsibility of raising children who deserve to see their father loved and respected until the very end. Eric spoke about Rebecca in his final interviews with a tenderness that was impossible to miss. He called her his biggest champion, his most stalwart supporter. He said he leaned on her. And in those words, you could hear a man who had lived a complicated and imperfect life, as all of us do, finally arriving at a place of peace, of gratitude, of clarity about what truly mattered. What truly mattered was his daughters, Billy and Georgia, two little girls who will grow up knowing that their father, when faced with the worst thing imaginable, chose to be brave, chose to be public, chose to use whatever time he had left not in self-pity, but in service. They will grow up knowing that their father was on television not just as McSteamy or Cal Jacobs or Captain Chandler, but as himself, a real man, sitting in a wheelchair in front of the United States Congress, fighting for strangers because it was the right thing to do. On February 19, 2026, Eric Dane passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family and closest friends. He was 53 years old. The tributes came immediately, and they came from everywhere. Sam Levinson, the creator of Euphoria, called working with Eric an honor and called being his friend a gift. His Grey's Anatomy castmates posted photos and memories. Fans who had watched him for 20 years flooded social media with grief that felt personal, because in many ways it was. Eric Dane had been in their living rooms, on their screens, in their hearts for a generation. And now he was gone. ALS does not care who you are. It does not care about your wealth or your talent or your fame or how many people love you. It comes for everyone the same way, with the same cruelty, the same relentless progression, the same refusal to make exceptions. Roughly 30,000 Americans are living with ALS right now. Every single day, approximately 15 Americans are diagnosed with it, and approximately 15 Americans die from it. The funding for ALS research remains dramatically underfunded compared to other diseases of similar severity. Eric Dane knew all of this. That is why he fought so hard, so publicly, for so long, even as his own body was failing him. He once said, and these words deserve to be remembered forever, that he was not going to go out quietly. He said, "Not to be overly morbid, but if I am going out, I'm going to go out helping somebody. And he did exactly that. Every interview he gave raised awareness. Every dollar he helped raise went toward research that could one day give another father more time with his daughters, another mother more time with her children, another person more time to simply live. Eric Dane's career spanned more than 3 decades. He appeared in X-Men, The Last Stand, in Burlesque, in dozens of television roles across multiple networks and multiple decades. He was versatile, committed, and perpetually underrated as an actor because his physical presence was so striking that it was easy to overlook the depth of what he was actually doing with his performances. Those who worked closely with him consistently described a man who was meticulous about his craft, generous with his fellow actors, and completely present in every scene. That is a rare combination in any industry, but especially in Hollywood, where ego and distraction can so easily get in the way of the actual work. And then in his final year, he gave the performance of his life, not on a screen, but in real life. He showed the world what it looks like to receive terrible news and still choose to be useful. He showed what it means to be scared and still show up. He showed that a life well lived is not measured in awards or box office receipts or Twitter followers, but in the moments when you had every reason to disappear and chose instead to stand up, or sit up, or will forward and say, I am still here, and I still have something to give. Eric William Dane is gone, but McSteamy lives. Cal Jacobs lives. Captain Chandler lives. And most importantly, the example of a man who faced death with grace and purpose and an unshakable commitment to other people. That lives too. It will live in the research funding he helped secure. It will live in the patients who will one day benefit from the awareness he raised. It will live in his daughters, who will carry his spirit forward into a world that is a little better, a little more compassionate, and a little more informed about ALS because their father refused to be silent. Rest in peace, Eric Dane. You were McSteamy on television, but in real life, you were something far more rare. You were genuinely, completely, and irreversibly good.